Good day and welcome to today's Conversation podcast. We've decided to bring back Martin Kalungu-Banda after our conversation and in-depth thread in his life. We thought we could bring special focus to especially issues of policy in Zambia and in Africa. What has gone wrong? What could be done better? What are our challenges? Where is this solution? Why is it eluding us? Honorable Martin Kalungu-Banda, welcome back.
It's wonderful to be back. Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful that you accepted to come back to us, because when I look at your CV, I think I can have you for, like we say on TV, a 13-series part where we break down a subject in each constituency. So I'm grateful that you came back. Today, we'll focus on especially policy issues in relation to leadership. What is Africa doing wrong? What is Africa doing right? You are privileged, as an academia. You started your work at the University of Zambia. You went into the corporate world. You worked for a multinational BP. Then you went into national and international development when you worked at Oxfam. Of course, then you retreated to academia, and then you've evolved as a leadership guru where you teach people how to lead, how to build teams, how to achieve. I think I want us now to specifically focus on that. But I want you to use your experiences at these institutions to bring these principles to life. Let's start with academia. You are affiliated with some of the most prestigious universities in the world, like Oxford, where the said business school is, and which you are affiliated to. What lessons can we do there? We only have had 2 public universities in Zambia, and we've expanded. We've allowed the private sector to bring in universities, and our education system doesn't seem to complement and work for us as a country. Maybe let's start first the academia aspect and this support to development.
Thank you very much. Needless to mention, education forms the gateway to much of our aspirations. Without an educated population, we can't advance. We can't be where we dream to be. But we also need to remember that education needs to keep progressing all the time. One of the opportunities I have currently is to work with colleagues in the Presencing Institute community and at MIT to support the OECD countries to reform their education system. What scares me most is that people we are looking up to in terms of their education system, Finland, Estonia, and many others, are questioning themselves whether their education system currently fits the future they are dreaming about, and their conclusion is no.
Now, these are the best models for an education system. Even they themselves are at a review stage.
They are asking because they want to create something that is truly appropriate for the future we face. Many human beings, even here at home, have questioned the validity of our education system. And we need to be asking ourselves, with all these developments around us, including artificial intelligence, the changing scenarios in the world, is our curriculum fit for purpose? Are we producing human beings who are going to be declared redundant in the next few years because machines, artificial intelligence, can do that much more effectively than a human being can?
There has been a constant call that we should decolonize our education system. And that word is used strongly, I think, not to cast aspersions against our former colonizers, but they had designed an education system fit for what they wanted to achieve. And sadly, many years later, almost 100 years later, we've adopted and have not changed our education system. you find an educated population but unemployed. You see graduates being churned out who cannot find jobs. In fact, our parents might even question the purpose of education. If it can't get you a job, it can't empower you, it can't skill you, it can't make you survive.
It cannot enable you to think on your feet, to find solutions to the emerging problems that you and your society and family are facing. And you have called it right. The need, the importance of decolonizing education. I know many academics, many researchers have sometimes spat on the impact and notion of neocolonialism. People ask us, this is over 60 years of being independent. Should we be crying from the impact of colonialism? Do not underestimate what colonialism and even slavery, I dare say, can do to a society, to a people. We shouldn't forget that put together, slavery and colonialism didn't last 30 years, 60 years, 100 years. We are talking about 402 years, maybe 403 years. When a particular society, a particular people is subjugated in that way for such a long period of time, it almost translates into one's DNA. It is not only our education system that has suffered from the impact of colonialism and slavery. It is our mentality as well. I would tell you one little story. Living and working out of England, sending my daughter to school, she outperformed her class. And she came back with a letter of commendation asking us, the parents, to go for prize giving. Do you know the words that first came out of my mouth? I'll try and say it in Nyanja. I said, oh my God, this kind of grades, diwe kamuzungu. The only comparison I had in my brain was...
Whites do better, our Europeans do better.
In many ways, we still suffer from that. We still suffer and think of ourselves as second, third, inferior. And it will take long. It will take long. And we have to be slightly more intentional than we are at the moment to decolonize not only our minds, but also our learning process. Everything we do, we look up to the West. And the West is synonymous with whiteness.
You introduced a new course when you joined the University of Zambia, the business ethics course. What motivated you? Did you find inadequacy in what you were given to teach that you thought by introducing this, which no one had thought about? What motivated that decision?
It's because in every aspect of life, whether we are leaders or followers, whether we are seeking to cooperate and collaborate with other people, at the core of that are ethical standards, the rightness and wrongness of our actions, of our decisions. And I wanted my students to begin to attune, to connect into that. Because as that time could tell, getting into university is also a gateway to a higher responsibility, to a leadership position. And I wanted them to have a basis for thinking about what is wrong, what is right. And you asked why, for me, education matters. And I wish I knew when I was that young, early in my teaching career at the University of Zambia, that it was a privilege that students in their hundreds sit before you day in and day out, week in and week out. It's a privilege to influence the thinking of those that are going to be responsible for the many institutions in our country. Today I walk in a bank and I find a person that I taught 15, 20 years ago. I walk into a government office and I've even forgotten, and someone reminds me, Mr. Kalungu-Banda, you were my lecturer at the University of Zambia. If only I had understood the gravity of the responsibility that I had. If you asked me to revise one thing, I would walk for the first time into that lecture theater feeling the weight of the responsibility I was carrying. But in those days, it felt like I am the clever one. You are here to learn from me. And the inclination was almost to lighten the responsibility that one had. For those of us who are in the teaching profession, regardless which level you are at, kindergarten, primary and secondary school, tertiary, you are involved in the business of shaping the future of the country. You might not be a politician, you might not be a business leader. At your core, all the other sectors consume the skills that you are nurturing. So that's one of the things I think about.
The issue again of skills and empowerment for people to survive in a harsh environment like our economy. You know, our education system, for example, excludes the teaching of money, entrepreneurship, and you would wonder that someone who retires at the age of 55 wants to become a businessman because they have money. It just demonstrates, I think, our ignorance. Because we think if we have one component of what is required, you know, to set up a business, then we think we can set up a business. Why haven't we strengthened, especially the issues of entrepreneurship and just the issues of business and money in our education system?
Purely because we looked in the wrong direction for a long period of time. Now we are waking up. Maybe too small, too slow. But I also know that there are some efforts being done. My wife and I helped, together with other colleagues in Zambia, to set up Impact Hub Lusaka, in which we bring together young people with an idea of how they can contribute to creating another job, to solving this and that problem in society, to producing this service or product. And we suspect that what we are doing at Impact Hub Lusaka could be the future of university education. It won't be coming there and learning about things that have no relevance to how you are going to live, to make decisions, to collaborate with other people. We introduced at Impact Hub Lusaka financial education program. Fortunately, the Minister for Science and Technology, Mr. Mtati, got wind of this. And we have partnered for the last 2.5 years together with the financial sector deepening Zambia. And we are taking financial education in vocational training colleges. And
everything I know about money, I never learned it in school. Everything I know about business, I never learned it in school. You can imagine how ignorant we are and at how we waste resources for lack of knowledge at very early age. And I'm glad of the work you are doing at Impact, Lab Lusaka. I wish it could be mainstreamed, that these ideas can be mainstreamed in our curriculum development.
To be fair, there are many other initiatives going on in that way. But to your point, the scale is not big enough. This should not be a preserve of those who are found in Lusaka and the Copper Belt. This should be accessed by everyone, every young person, every elderly person. Tell you what, the first time we prototyped financial education, and we did a little test for an audience that was as diverse as our society is. Not even those who are working in the banking and finance sector passed more than 60% in terms of financial literacy. Because
that's how ignorant we are.
Financial education is slightly much more than knowing banking and accounting.
The call I receive all the time is for young people looking for jobs. Ambassador, you are connected, or you know this one, can I have a job? you recognize that we have an education system that has modeled and educated, given skills to people who should wait in line for a job. But you have an economic system that has moved away from there. The jobs are few. The formal jobs are almost absent. We had about 1 million formal jobs in the 70s. 30, 40 years later, we still have that, about 1.1 million formal jobs. Literally, it has shrunk. And you have a huge population, an adult population of about 7 million, 8 million eligible young people who are willing to work. But what have they been taught? To go and be a clerk at a bank, to go and work somewhere. Everyone is on a queue for a job. There is no one who has been taught to create jobs for themselves. There is no one who has been taught to employ others. In fact, the young people that are surviving and employing others, it's just their own initiative. And you can imagine how many mistakes you'll have to make without an education. So for me, I bemoan our education system, that it doesn't respond to the challenges of our economy.
You are spot on. Our education system should be teaching us how to think, how to experiment our thinking, and how to harvest the lessons we are getting from experimentation. Most of us passed because we memorized.
Yeah.
We regurgitated what we had memorized during exams. We got an A, an A+, and a B+, and we were deemed good enough for the next and the next. The society we are facing, the society we will continue to face going forward, requires much more than regurgitation. It requires the capacity to move into what we refer to as action confidence. Action confidence is not because I'm 100% sure this will happen. Action confidence comes from, I could experiment my way to something I don't even know at the moment. So what do we need to do?
It empowers you to take risks.
Absolutely. I once, I do annually go to teach at the Leadership Center in Poland. And the founder of the Leadership Center once said, Martin, you need to go and visit the Google campus in Warsaw. And we went there. And what did I find? This phenomenal open space. And there are desks where groups of young people come, they are given space to sit there for 6 to 9 months. So it could be a group of 5 boys and girls here, another group there, another group there, and they are doing their own thing. The only criteria for being given space on the campus is that you must have a question you are seeking to crack.
Wow.
You must have a challenge you are trying to resolve in society, or you must have a job you are trying to create.
They don't bring a sheet of paper and say you must do this for you to benefit from.
And watch them. Watch what happens in the next 6 to 9 months.
Innovation emerges.
Absolutely. Of all sorts. Some are working on technology. Some are working on practical things as what is the best way of cutting a piece of wood? What is the best way of shaping a stone? What is the best way of organizing a community in order for it to solve its own problems? It's a place of experimentation.
Wow.
And put these people together for that period of time, you find that the quality of their thinking and learning is far much higher than the 2-3 year degree program that you give.
That we do, yeah.
From time to time, they would bring in people to sort of just share ideas. But these are people who are both coming from research, this is what we have learned, or someone saying, this is what I tried, and this is how I failed. This is what I tried, and this is how I succeeded. That is found to be much, much more useful and valuable.
My last question on education, of course we keep on coming back to it, is Africa has this youth bulge. Young people, like I said, most of them educated, most of them looking for opportunities, and jobs are not there. They are actually, from a policy perspective, they're actually a threat to national security. Because you cannot have such a huge number of young people yet doing nothing. They will fall to vices, of abuse of either alcohol and drugs, to crime, prostitution, and they will be more disruptive. They will not be helpful to both the economy and its own society. What must be done?
First of all, by the time before we even call them a threat to national security, the young people we are referring to are literally a mirror to society. They are mirroring who we are and who we are becoming. I must confess, there might be different meanings, but one of the things that truly breaks my heart is the language we are shaping to describe some of our own children. In Lusaka, there is
like
the term
junkies.
That pricks my heart. Junkies, the so-called, because for me they would rather be young men and women, are a product of the policies we have shaped and followed, or not followed. Quite often, if not always, when you see a problem, particularly for young people in society, they are not to blame. I'm not saying crime should be tolerated, but young people whose minds are still malleable, it's us who are shaping them.
I agree with you there.
So we need
When we saw street kids, who do we think they become 10 years from now? You will no longer see them on the street. So if you do not have a solution to street kids, then you will not have a solution to its byproduct, who are then the so-called junkies. So I agree with you that government must not be absent from all these social crises.
And this is a challenge that the entire society should converge on. If government is arrogant and think they can solve this by themselves, they are sadly mistaken. If civil society organizations arrogantly think they can solve this by themselves by forming small NGOs that respond to the needs of a few young people, we are sadly mistaken. The church, in its might, is not good enough acting on its own. This is one of those moments. And for me, this is part of what our education system should be doing. Training us as citizens, particularly the young, how to collaborate with others to solve those critical challenges, wicked challenges that no single sector is capable of solving, acting on its own. We need to learn these new ways of doing things. Private sector is suited for certain things. As situations become much more complex, private sector can't solve them. Government needs civil society. Within civil society, we need the church because they touch another area that we cannot easily touch in other sectors. In fashion, again, is cross-sectoral collaboration. The more complex a problem is, the more
parties you need to come to the table.
Stakeholder approaches are needed to solve them. And that needs slightly much more than simply saying, I am right. And for me, that's partly what leads to the conversation that leaders at all levels need to practice a little bit of humility. That I am in a leadership position, but doesn't mean that I have the keys or the holy grail to the answers. It is what makes us humble enough to invite other people to think and search and experiment with others.
Wonderful. Let's move to the public sector. It is assumed, it's a panacea to all problems. I think this is where the process is heavily contested. That's where you have the president leading a group of fellow leaders who become MPs, and then you have the infrastructure of the state. You were privileged to work under President Levi Mwanawasa, and I will keep on coming back to there, because then it locates Zambia's problems where they are. We haven't changed much as a country. In fact, we've been regressing. From 1964, we were a thriving democracy, multi-party democracy, private sector-led, and over the years, we just became something else. And from 1991, there was an attempt for a reboot, a restart. And again, we are lost along the way. You see identity failure on who we are. What policy should we pursue? In fact, we mix everything and anything. It's like we don't know what we want. What should be done? You are a policy expert. You teach on leadership. Let's begin with your stay at President Mwanawasa's office.
Permit me to go back to a line which you have emphasized here.
Yeah.
Identity failure.
Yeah.
If we do not put a premium on defining our identity, we'll keep on hooking to every possible solution, even those that have been tried and have failed all the time. Who are we?
Yeah.
We are Zambians. We exist with a particular culture. We have our own history. Can we come together and define who we want to be going forward? And I emphasize this definition should not just be based on a political party that is in power or that is aspiring to be in power. There is such thing as coming together and defining who we are and who we are becoming. A nation that has no identity, everything goes. And that's why, in terms of policy formulation, we listen to what is working in other parts of the world without knowing what is obtaining on the ground and try and catch that. We bring it over here, it doesn't fit the mold. We need to define ourselves. For example, when we are talking about the policy on privatization, what does that mean in the Zambian context? Even democracy. Democracy needs to reinvent itself.
Yeah.
The Greeks passed on to the world something very beautiful.
Yeah.
But what would that mean in our own context here? Because if democracy simply means casting a vote every 5 years and then we fold our hands and wait for the magic to happen, that's not how it works. What would people's participation in their own governance mean in the Zambian context? So when we are talking about policy formulation, we should bear in mind that what comes first is who are we? Who are we seeking to become? And therefore, what are the policies that will help us to transition from where we are to where we need to be? Institutions of government, including the public service, are critical. Obviously, we have not been very creative as a global society. We have not done much to improve on what the Greeks gave us in terms of democracy. But maybe as we see the systems failing across the world, it will force us to ask the question, what does it mean for Zambia to be led by its own people? People power, people influence, self-determination. Maybe the situation will force us. But we also need to inquire what is the role of institutions such as the public service. By the way, I need to tell you one of the key lessons I learned around what it means to reform or what it takes. I arrived from the UK at the invitation of President Mwanawasa. And I see how cabinet meetings are being held. And because previously I had seen how effective and efficient cabinet meetings were held in Rwanda, I suggested to the president that we make changes to the way we were preparing for cabinet meetings.
How were they held in Rwanda? Maybe speak to that briefly.
Agenda items don't appear just because they are listed there. Long before a cabinet meeting is held, minister puts across, or any other relevant arm of government puts across what should form an agenda item. And it must be in good time for you to give a brief background information to allow cabinet ministers to do their own research, to even make comments online, so that by the time you're arriving there, somehow ideas have been shared, questions have been raised, and a question or an agenda item that would have taken an hour can easily be done in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Without being thin on data, on information, on evidence. And I suggested this to the president.
Yeah.
The president said, I like the idea. And I said, but we need to prepare you at least the Friday before or Thursday before the next cabinet meeting, so that if there is any information you still need as chair, we can research around that and give you in order to get ready. And he said to me, that's the way to go, Martin. Could you please let the please let the Secretary of Cabinet know that this is what we'll be doing, and on Thursday we'll be gathering at 2 p.m. to look at the cabinet meeting for the following week.
With the president?
With the president.
Ah, okay.
And my brother, it's 5 minutes to 14 hours. The president walks in. Secretary to Cabinet is not in. And 1 minute before 2, I decide to call the Secretary to Cabinet. I said, Secretary to Cabinet, what is this? We are sitting here and the president is here. And he politely says, Martin, can I speak to the president? I pass on the phone to the president. The president nods his head. And then he turns to me and says, Martin, I'm really sorry. We have to postpone this meeting because the Secretary to Cabinet is working on something extremely crucial that I asked him to. And this is the moment that this can be best done.
Okay.
I politely acknowledged the president's remarks and I furiously walked back to my office, lifted my phone, and I said, Secretary to Cabinet, is this how you run government? Literally, making the president wait for you. And he usually was very polite.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the late Dr. Kanganja.
Yes, Dr. Joshua Kanganja.
Yeah. And he said to me, Martin, stop that nonsense at once and come to my office. Oh gosh, I was taken aback.
Yeah.
That wasn't his nature, that wasn't his character. So I quickly got into the car, drove, it's a short drive to Cabinet office. And I arrived in his office. He normally would stand up and walk towards the easy chairs there so that we can sit in a friendly way as colleagues.
Yeah.
This time, he pointed at the seat opposite his table. And I said, I sat there. Then he said, so, what's this nonsense?
You want to introduce?
Yeah. And I said, the president did indicate to you that we will be meeting every Thursday to prepare him for the following cabinet meeting. And you didn't show up for the meeting. He says, I'm asking you, what is this nonsense? Listen to me. Working there is only a part of what it takes to run this thing called the public service. Did you want me to look silly before the president? Why didn't you come over here? We talk about that. I tell you how things work.
Yeah.
I probably would have gone with your idea. You can't just hail from Oxford. Drop by here
And
think
change
you can move
the
things.
system and
This thing
traditions.
has been crafted over a long period of time.
Yeah.
My brother, here was my lesson. The only thing I could do at that point was to apologize. No matter how powerful you are, when you enter a system, to reform it, first of all, you need to understand it. But you need to have utter respect for the people you have found there.
Because they'll treat you as competition. They'll treat you as one that wants to get rid of their jobs.
Not only that, you are spitting on the many years of experience and knowledge they have had. They are not resistant to change. So we must know that.
There should just be a buy-in.
All humans resist to be changed.
Okay.
When you are in the process of reform, your job, as I said earlier on, is to raise the mirror. And most human beings are reasonable. When they see themselves that their collar is upstanding, they will drop that. That's how you reform things. If you push across ignorance, your own power. And I was thinking I was sitting next to the president, so
Had
I
more
could
power.
easily cruise through. I was sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
And he actually reminded me later on, he said, didn't you know that I understood the system so well that I could give an excuse to the president that would have the meeting postponed?
Like he did. Like he did.
So all I am
But
saying...
did your idea suffer?
No. When I behaved, when I became humble enough, then we began to implement the same things.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
I needed to do was to find who should I be talking to in the system.
You know, that particular matter reminds me when President Hakainde Hichilema recently introduced the Presidential Delivery Unit. My criticism, outside what you are saying, probably you saw my write-up, was exactly that. How will those two girls, young girls, commandeer and bully Secretary to Cabinet and his entire machinery? Because the Presidential Delivery Unit, as you know, is actually Secretary to Cabinet and his team. So why are they being bypassed? There should be justification why we are abandoning this, civil service that should be the Presidential Delivery Unit to the President and his ministers, and why you should allow a unit to do monitoring and evaluation. And also it came to issues of culture and tradition, where you have these two young girls that then should speak to those senior men of 20, 30 years experience of what needs to be done and what can be done.
I have seen delivery units work effectively. I've seen it in Ethiopia. I've seen it happen in Rwanda again. It is all about you, the person who has been tasked to lead the unit, to work in the unit, to have tact. In many languages, I think in Zambia, there is the equivalent of a saying, when a kid learns to wash their hands, they can eat with elders. It's just how you show up. And that you are not subtracting from those elders. By elders, I simply mean people who have been in the civil service for long, they are experienced, they are knowledgeable. When you show up the right way, and when you are saying, I will add to the value you are generating. I will help you to deliver even more. And as it were, you take a servant's role. But if you go with your chips on your shoulders, and that I'm speaking to the boss, and that I will go and report to the boss directly, human beings have a sense of pride. Even if they know you have all the powers, they will resist being demeaned. I'm not saying the ladies you are referring to, that's what they are doing.
You're speaking
all I
to
am
principle.
saying is that you need to have tact. And that's another thing I learned when I had the opportunity to work in government.
I think that was very
Humility
apt.
helps. When you are humble, you will make kings serve you. That's all. But if you really want to thrive on the fact that you are sitting next to someone who is powerful, or you serve someone who is powerful, usually people don't like that. And they will find a way of resisting.
The ecosystem around the president is a very, very difficult ecosystem. Because first you have politicians. It could be a presidential minister or members of his cabinet. Then you have colleagues, the special assistants, who sometimes are competing for favors with the president, competing for attention from the president. And some of the things that occur are not things you can find in the books, are not things that you can find. It's like a court where a king is. How did you survive that? And how did you find it? How did you have to drop some of your standards? Did you have to humble even your education for you to survive?
My colleagues might have a different view. Those that I served with in the short period of time that I was fortunate enough to serve President Mwanawasa at State House. But what I noticed was that he made sure he distributed his attention to each one of us. But also, personally, I also took it is my responsibility to help the president access everyone he needed to access. So on one of those moments, I'm having a chat with one of our secretaries,
Yeah.
Jean Piri, and she passed on, may her soul rest in peace. And as we were chatting, Jean told me, do you realize that I have served all the presidents, at least I've been in State House to serve all the presidents. I said, you must be joking, you look so young, how did that happen? He said, no. Yes, I entered civil service quite early, and as a young person, Dr. Kaunda was here. After that, Dr. Chiruba came in, and then she recounted all that.
Yeah.
And then there was the next line. But guess what? Other than when we see them to welcome them when they are coming into State House after being sworn in, I have never shaken hands with anybody.
Wow.
And I said, you must be joking. He said, no, I have never. I said, what about President Mwamba? He said, no, I have never. So on one of the occasions when I was having a one-on-one with him, then I said, Jean was telling me that she has never met you. She has never shaken hands with you. And he said, who is Jean? One of our secretaries. And I said, oh, but there isn't anything here. I'm just here doing my job. I said, no, you are the head of state. And at that point, then I made a request. I said, do you mind finding time to say hello to Jean? And he said, Martin, you're just complicating things. Let's leave that aside.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, and I was telling him that I was going to be traveling back to see my family in the UK. And then the president said, oh, Martin, you remember, you talked about Jean wanting to see me. Do you think she can come now?
Wow.
I moved out of the president's office, went to the secretaries, and then I called my office and I said, Jean, would you come over? He said, where are you? I said, I'm at the president's office. And he said, no, sir, I can't come there. What wrong have I done? I've never walked that corridor before. And then I said, please do come over. She came. And it was one of the most wonderful moments to watch when the head of state stands up and walks to this young woman. And out of respect, she kneels down to greet him. And he asks her to stand up. But she couldn't because she was overwhelmed. And then afterwards, they chatted. He said, I'm really sorry. I didn't know that this really mattered because I just come here going to my office. Maybe I should be doing this a little bit more often to meet those that I'm working with. My brother, the story I'm trying to say here is that when you are around a person of power, and I mean including family, a good husband tries and make available to the rest of the community and the extended family their spouse so that they can share what they know. A good wife does that, makes the husband accessible to family members. But a managing director, the same story, make them accessible. In the story I'm talking about here, came this bit when the president thought, what should I do? Maybe I should even find a way of thanking all the staff at State House. And one Christmas, he wrote a letter to all the staff, including cleaners and sweepers.
Wow.
To just say, I may not have expressed gratitude. Thank you for helping me to do the job that I was elected for. And pardon me if I ignore you along the way.
I can tell you that letter lies in picture frames
somewhere
across the country. Whoever was privileged to receive such a letter from the president, it remains many years later, a pride moment.
So just to close it up, if you can as a leader, don't make those people around you jostle for your attention. It will just distract them from doing the real work they're supposed to do. And for those who are privileged to work around men and women of power and influence, there is something much more important than jostling for the attention. Once you do the right job, the president will recognize you, and your managing director will recognize you. Just like good parents don't choose between their many children, leaders should never choose among those that are surrounding them.
Wonderful. I can't let you go. You are one of our eminent minds in our country, well experienced from across the world. And Zambia is looking for solutions. We are looking for solutions. We are preoccupied with these various crises, from the economy, social, religious, as I saw Bishop Paul Msusu speak to those issues. What should we do? What should we do? What should be done? How can we be a thriving, prosperous nation? What is it that we've been doing wrong? What should be done better?
First of all, just to acknowledge the energy, commitment, passion of Bishop Paul Msusu, which has gone on over the years. He hasn't given up on the country. He hasn't given up on the good prospects that we could harvest if we chose to walk a certain path. So what should we be doing? Number one thing is to acknowledge the simple fact that there isn't one very gifted, intelligent, superhuman being sitting there with answers to the problems of our country. There isn't. We might pretend that we know, but there isn't any one person. As I said earlier on, the only answer lies in us reaching out to one another and to everybody. Whoever can contribute, no matter how small, no matter how big, to finding a solution. Dismembering ourselves in whatever form, creating what I refer to as them and us, will not help us solve the complexities of the problems we face as a country. There isn't a political party which is clever enough to solve all the problems. There isn't a single club, a single NGO or church which has the preserve of the knowledge, the experience, the skills we need to create the dream Zambia we all long for. The answer lies in leaders across the patch, recognizing unless we come together to think together genuinely, we won't get anywhere. And by the way, there are very few spaces, not only in Zambia but in the world, for thoroughly thinking through problems. Most of the time, it's either in a meeting where the big boss is the one speaking down onto the people. They never sit down to exchange. One of the things I found in deep short supply, both while supporting leaders, political and otherwise, across Africa, across the world, what I found through research and learning, what is mostly in short supply among leaders is the capacity to listen. They feel it's their job to speak out their thoughts, their ideas. In that way, they are not in a learning position. And leaders who don't listen don't learn. Leaders who don't learn, they can't solve critical challenges. If there is one thing I would ask for, whether you are a business leader, a political leader, a civil society leader, a faith leader, try and create time to listen to people around you. And collectively, as we listen to one another, we will begin to have new insights. There isn't a magic wand out there for solving problems other than listening to one another and experimenting our way to the new.
Countries that have succeeded, the West are a good example. But emerging economies like Singapore, South Korea, or Malaysia, or Middle East, of course, it could have been aided by oil. there are some things that they've done, some basic principles that then brought forth the success. In your leadership development and the teaching that you do, what are those things?
It's what is true, even at a smaller scale. Be frugal. Whatever resources you have, use them as well as you can. But if you are holding a public office, open yourself up to accountability. Because accountability allows that the entire system which is superintending the resources is being watched. And those that do not have an internal motor to do the right thing, at least can be compelled by the watchful eye that there are consequences to misusing what doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
But it also means it's building relationships internally and externally that are fair. If we don't build partnerships with the international community where it's always horse and rider, we will only bleed our resources all the time. We may get crumbs here and there through a trickle of jobs, maybe taxation of this and that, but the real value transfers to the so-called partner. So we need leaders who are going to put their foot on the ground and say, I think this is what is fair for my people, otherwise we won't play ball. But it also means within the country, we, the citizens, must be willing to push ourselves slightly beyond edges.
Yeah.
I do agree. Tough as it sounds, there are sacrifices to be made. There are belts to be tightened. But we must know that, and we must have, that there are levels below which we cannot allow ourselves to tighten our belts.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people don't survive. How do we create the process of transitioning from the unacceptable position where we are to the future we desire, but at the same time not allowing people to fall through the cracks? That basic needs must be met.
Yeah.
And quite often, countries like ours have enough wealth and resources with which to make this transition. But we have to be alert and not to be wasteful and to distribute the little that is there as evenly and as equitably as we can. It is the artistry of those that are in power to be able to do that.
Yeah, I was posting a video from Singaporean Prime Minister, and he was demonstrating how they built their national reserves, a sovereign fund, and it's one of the biggest. It's about $300 billion. Even oil countries do not have that kind. In comparison, for example, Qatar's sovereign fund is $43 billion. But here is a small country with $343 billion. Whereas a country, they decided to sacrifice and each year put away some money, and the investment was frugal. So it's decisions like that, for me, that inspire me, that a country literally with no resources can build up reserves up to $340 billion. While Zambia, endowed with all these resources, barely goes beyond $4 billion.
If we decide to do this singularly, if a government decides to build those reserves over time without engaging citizens, they may, one, not understand, two, they may feel they are being unfairly treated, they may protest in one way or the other. Whatever decisions are being made, and this can be annoying for the people in power. One, explain your way through. Two, be willing to answer the tough questions of how do I survive today? Three, be willing to engage in genuine dialogue with citizens. Humans are reasonable. Once you engage in conversation, they will hear you, or you could learn from them something that can help you to get to where you want to be.
We like imposing solutions.
It is not a carte blanche, a mandate when people elect a government and say, keep off for the next 5 years. That's not how it works. It is, we have said, go on. You have a term of 5 years, but please, let's keep talking to one another.
Yeah.
Engage me. And that's the only way we can run a safe, peaceful country going forward. But if people have the notion that, no, you voted for me, sit back and question me at the end of 5 years, it's a wrong approach towards running the state affairs of a nation such as ours.
Yeah. No, wonderful, wonderful. Martin Kalungu-Banda, as we come to the end of this program, give me your final, last thoughts.
For me, it is simply this. We need to create conditions in our country where every person feels invited, safe enough to contribute to the development of our nation. I'm not saying that is not there, but there is always something more we can do to build ourselves as a stronger, united country. Yeah. There are times when you read media locally and internationally, when it feels like almost reaching levels of polarization. And I keep going back to this, almost moving to the them and us. We cannot progress that way. We could be, and we have experienced this before, one nation, one Zambia, one people. But everybody has to feel the responsibility that it's my job to contribute to the well-being of this country. Yeah. It's my job to sacrifice, but it's also my right to be heard and to feel psychologically and practically secure. That for me is at the base of whatever we seek to do. Yeah. Once we are one, nothing is impossible.
Wonderful. Martin Kalungu-Banda, and to all you viewers, I posted a promo of our early program, and it has received a lot of suggestions. So you might be a regular guest when time allows here. And I know that when Mrs. Kalungu-Banda has time, the two of you may come to our conversation. So viewers, you are privileged that I was hosting Martin Kalungu-Banda today. We thought we could just spend special time on the challenges of our country and solutions, and using his experience as he has elaborated. Martin Kalungu-Banda, thank you for coming, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for the chat, and wishing you well in your program.
Thank you very much. To you all, God bless you. Shalom, shalom.